Okay, Dan says, starting to, okay, this is a question that came from the Facebook group, and I asked him to post it over here. Excuse me. Dan says, starting to use silos more because of the obvious benefits, and had a question for Bradley or one of the other guys. Have a new client that has a small site that is already established but is fairly small, just 43 pages. It's a telecommunications site that has a services page that then lists out dozens of services. They do have subcategories already created for just 4 of the services. The existing structure goes like this. Home, then services, and then as a subcategory, service 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to create a silo using the services as a top-level page. My question is, should I make the services page the top level and then create subcategories for the services, or should I create separate silo structure for the services, i.e. keywords I'm targeting, and then link back to the services page already created? It gets a little messy for already established sites as to where you should start the silo structure. Any help, advice is greatly appreciated. Great question, Dan. This is something that we've covered a lot over the last year or so in like the mastermind and masterclass. I don't mind covering it here as well. That's why I asked you to post it. But I don't want this to open up a big can of worms. What I'm going to tell you is that the services page has absolutely no value to the silo structure. So I never recommend using something like, and I see this mistake being made all the time with people trying to silo sites, is they'll use something like a services page or a locations page or something like that as a top of the silo, and then they'll use their keywords as subcategories. But that's not the best way to do it. The services page makes sense for a navigational point of view. So for visitors, the services page makes sense because for example, if you've got, let's say that let's say that you're just going to target 4 services, and like you're showing here, just main 4 services. Then from the home page, it could be that there's not enough room in your navigation menu to list all 4 services. And in fact, that can be it can just look messy anyways if you have all 4 services listed at the top in your main navigation menu. So what I always do is I put a services page, just like what you're talking about, but it's not part of the silo. It's just a navigational page. In other words, there's a services tab at the top of the navigation menu. People click on that. It takes them to a page which then lists the services and a link to each of the top level pages, right? So each one of the services would actually be the top of the silo. It would each get its own silo, and each one of the service 1, service 2, service 3, and service 4 would be the top of the silo, right? So the services page itself is only a navigational page for visitors, meaning they click on the services page, it takes them to an index page with maybe a brief description of each service and a link that links to the top of the silo. They click that, and from there the silo structure begins. Okay? So it's the services page does not need to be included in the silo structure because it has no value to the silo itself. Does that make sense? Now, the only time that it would make sense to have that is if this was a top-level keyword and you had sub-services that reinforced that. So what do I mean by that? Let me try to kind of draw this out a little bit. Every time I break out the notepad or snag it, you guys know you're in trouble. So let's try to clear this up a little bit. All right, you know what? I'm going to use the remodeling keywords as the example from like the Gainesville Home Pros Masterclass case study. We'll use something like that. So we're just going to say like domain.com. Okay, can everybody see this well? Hopefully that's coming through all right. Should I make the font bigger?
Yeah.
Make it bigger?
Yeah, just in case, because we see it slightly bigger than the guys actually see it. So.
How about that?
Yeah, that works.
All right, so domain.com, then we'll say like domain.com/services, okay, which would be just a navigational page, and then we're going to say domain.com/ let's say, sorry, let's do this. We're going to say keyword 1, which is service 1, guys. You guys get that? Just pretend for a minute. Domain.com/ keyword 2, right? So these would be what I consider the top level silos, right? The silo heading, right? And then from here you would put your supporting articles beyond that. But the problem that I see, or the mistake that I see a lot of people making, is where they would put this services as part of the silo structure, which it doesn't need to be, because it doesn't make sense to. Occasionally it does, but actually the service page itself really would never make any sense. I'll give you an example of another way to structure this in just a second. But this is what I'm talking about, is where I see it like this, where I see keyword 1, And then people consider, and they make this the subcategory, right? And this being the top level category. But the thing is that the services page itself really doesn't fit into any silo structure, right? Because especially if you're listing for, fairly, unique services that aren't, closely related. And does that make sense? Like, it doesn't make sense to have 4 different types of services on one service page and then have that be the top of the silo, because then you dilute all of your sub-silos, right? All of the subcategories become diluted because the top level page isn't reinforcing any one of the subcategories, right? It's because it's too broad, it's too general. It's listing 4 other services. So you bleed the theme of the silo that way. And I see that mistake being made a lot. So instead, what you want to do is just use that as a navigational page. So people click on this page, it takes them to a page where it lists these 4 services, and a blurb about each one of them, and a link that they can click, which then takes them to the top of the silo page. So you want to keep each silo page separate, okay? Each category from there. So the only time that I would recommend that you would do something like that is if you have like a broad category that then you have subcategories within. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. So for example, I know I just spelled that wrong. Let's try again. Domain.com, let's say remodeling, right? So remodeling is an example. Remodeling is a very broad term because aren't there subcategories within remodeling? Right? Yes, there are, of course, like home, kitchen remodeling, bathroom remodeling, basement remodeling. Those are just 3 examples, right? So my point is, instead of having a services pages, if I was building a remodeling site, like what I've done for the, you guys can go look at GainesvilleVA.localhomepros.net or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Gainesville Home Pros, just go look that up in Google, and you can take a look at an example of a mono-siloed site, which is using this exact same method here, or structure that I'm sharing. So remodeling would be the services page here, but then there's subcategories, right? And this makes sense for this to be the top of the silo when it looks like this. Remodeling, let's say kitchen. Then we'll do remodeling bathroom. And then lastly, remodeling basement, right? So these right here would be subcategories in which all of these would link back up to the, and I'm using air quotes now, but the services page, because this is the broader category. But just having a services page in general to listing the others doesn't make sense to a silo. I mean, again, if it does, it's typically not going to be a services page. It's going to be the top of a silo anyways. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope, Dan, that was clear. We've got some really in-depth training covering this inside of the mastermind, and also I do have some videos. I think you might have seen them, but if not, we can drop the simple silo and complex silo videos on the events page here, and you can take a look at those, and that'll kind of explain some more of this as well, going in more depth.